Hi there, and welcome to Reflections with Rhonda Jones. Today our co-host is present. She had a slight accident in her Kung Fu class. So sad, but she's been on the mend, and it's Monica Livingston. And we have Kimberly Johnson and Ruthie Wyburn as our panelists. And today we are going to start off with something that will get you prepared in case of emergencies. Is that sort of like what we're supposed to be talking about? Okay, go ahead. Take it off.
We had a minor tropical storm scare this past week. Looked like maybe something was coming our way. Didn't. So I just thought, for preparedness, almost everybody has 1 or 2 or 20 of these laying around, depending on who you are. So I thought we could talk about maybe a couple of things you can do with these, because you can pretty much get them for free if you have friends that drink soda. My son and his girlfriend go through about 6 of these a week, so
you have plenty.
So I don't have to pay for them. The first thing we do with them is fill them about 3/4 of the way full of water and put them in the freezer. And you should have 1 of these per person per day for an emergency. So for a 3-day supply for us would be 18, and 18 in my freezer would also, if we lost power, turn my freezer into a giant ice chest.
Nice.
So, and then when you're out of the water, if you're still in an emergency survival situation, you can actually fill it up with, if you have an extra one or have water that you can use for washing, turn it upside down, unscrew the lid just a little bit, and it'll be a place where you can wash your hands. Because it'll drip just real slow. Turn it off to scrub up, turn it back on to rinse. You can, I've actually seen somebody cut the thing in half and turn this side in and bait it and catch small fish, and then use the small fish to catch bigger fish. So if you're really desperate, now after a hurricane you may not want to go fishing because you ain't sure what's in the water.
True to that.
But if it's been like a week, or if you're out in the woods and all you got your 2-liter bottle, you can use it to catch fish. And
very interesting. And I was thinking when you said about 3 days worth of water, usually FEMA, Red Cross will come by and dole out supplies. But what I saw on the news concerning this storm and the government shutdown, they had to recall I don't even know how many. I'd lie to you if I'm going to say 1,000 FEMA employees just to help with the impending storm, because they were furloughed, which means they weren't. I mean, isn't that scary? Here comes a storm.
Little bit.
And the whole nation is suffering with different types of storms, whether it be snow or fires, high winds, impending storms. And we have people furloughed that normally help to provide people with these, accommodations that they need. Because remember when Ivan came about, we all remember that. Oh, yeah. And you run out of water, you run out of food, perishable things. And whenever we saw the Red Cross truck come by, it was almost like seeing Jesus, thank God. Yeah. And you run out there and get your food. I mean, unless you've been through that, you just don't understand.
Right.
And so that's a great idea.
And any water that you have is less water you have to take off of those FEMA trucks for somebody else that maybe didn't think to prepare.
See, you thought about that, of being, courteous and not greedy.
Well, we did that, whenever Ivan came through, if the Red Cross truck came through and we still had something, we tell them, no, thank you, please take it on to the next person.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sure we weren't the only people. I mean, that's not anything I wouldn't think uncommon, but
and it can go the other way, too. You have people that'll hoard up stuff.
Well, I guess you could. Yeah,
that's enough of that, about the hoarding. Ruthie.
OB
guilty, are you?
When Ivan came through, they stopped at our house, and he said they stopped at our house, and we said he said we still have some from the last visit, and sent them on their way. Yeah. And then they came back, and he said, we already have power and water. We don't need you to stop by here. Give it to somebody else. So.
Because they have a limited amount of supplies.
Exactly.
There's only so many people they can help, and if you don't need the help,
Sure.
And
yeah, I mean, everybody would do that, right?
I would think so, or at least most people. Most people would do
Most
that.
people would do that.
There's probably some that wouldn't, but most people would.
Well, Ruthie gave me, let me borrow some books concerning a catastrophic event about EMFs or whatever, solar flares, and it really made you think, would I be a hoarder, HOARDER, or would I be somebody that would be willing to share my last crumb with somebody else?
Yeah.
And when you're put in that situation, we all want to say we would be people that share, but I believe I would. That's really in my heart to do. But if you've got your family and you've got 6 people there and 5 people come to get it, what takes place? Does that inner selfishness stand out? I don't know. That's Ruthie. What would you do?
I don't know. You'd have to be put in that spot to do it. You can say, this is what I would do, but you don't know till you're put there.
I agree with that. I really do. I mean, we can be all altruistic and say, I have and I'm not talking about you because I believe you would do it just right off the bat.
Well,
but when it comes to your children, and if they wouldn't
Yeah.
have food, it'd be hard pressed for me to give away my children's food
yeah,
to somebody
see,
else.
I don't think I would be able to do that. I might give away mine, but I wouldn't give away my kids.
Right.
That's what I was going to say, is that, I might let mine go so that some other woman's children could eat, or some other man's children could eat. But I don't think I would let my children go without food. I mean,
Right.
Sure. Absolutely.
And if you don't think your sister would mind me saying, her sister has stocked food for her family, and then she didn't stop because she had enough for her family. She's continued, and I don't think that's hoarding, but that's, so that she would be able to help other people or extended family. So,
Yeah.
when you're thinking about stockpiling food, you can keep that in mind. You have extended family, you have neighbors.
Good point. That's true. Very good. So you never know when any type of, weather pattern might come, or the electric grid that you're on fails. I mean, you never know. So it is good to, and to saying all this, and some people don't even have the food for that day, seems a little embarrassing in a way. I don't really get embarrassed, but you know what I'm saying. Not embarrassing, but, oh, yeah, you need to stockpile in case of emergency. And they're just scrounging for
Right.
a little bit of food. Yeah, that day's meal. And you hear people on the weather channels and the news channels, and they'll say, go to your bank and get your cash and get all your medications and get your food and water, how many days worth. And, it's not an insult to people, but yet I can see people saying, I'll be lucky to eat today.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad. We've got to do something in this country. Okay, any other tips or anything? That was great about the 2 liters, because as everybody knows, and I'll confess to hoarding 2-liter bottles when Dr. Jones used to drink a lot of Diet Dr. Pepper. I've myriad 2-liter bottles.
lots and lots and lots. But we use them for crafts and other things.
We do.
So,
We do?
She could share with all of us her 2 liters so that we'd be prepared for the storm.
I could.
That's
The whole
And-
neighborhood. No.
Well, just for fun, because if you have kids and they're bored, you can take one of these and put a little bit of oil and an equal amount of water and a drop of food coloring, dump some glitter in there, let a kid shake it around and play with it.
There you go.
Because they're going to get bored,
Yes, they are.
No,
Yes,
no
they are.
electricity. No.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to come up to a subject that I'm going to let Monica handle, and it's concerning bullying. And we've talked a little bit about it over the course of the years that we've been doing this, but there's a reason that we're going to talk about it today. Momo, take it away.
Well, we all know it's a problem in the school system, but not just in the school system. It can be in the workplace. It can be, in the home. It could be, neighborhoods, wherever. I had an instance this past week with my son where I was eating lunch with him at school, and he was naming off some of the kids that he saw that were in his class from the previous year. And he mentioned that 2 of them were in kindergarten again. And he made a comment, and it didn't sound bad, but I wanted him to think about repeating it. He said it more in a questioning way. He said, maybe those kids aren't as smart as I am. And I said, well, have you thought about the fact that maybe they might not be able to hear what the teacher's teaching? And it may not be that they're not smart, but if they can't hear it, they can't learn it. Or they might have vision problems. Or it could be, something with their brain, because different people are born different ways, and
or home environment.
Right, yeah, and I mentioned that as well, and just gave them some examples, and I said, but you would never want to say anything in front of that person or just talk about it. I said, talking about it with mommy's okay. I said, but if you talk about it with one of your friends, it could be repeated, and it could end up being something that would harm that person or make them harm themselves, And I said, or it could turn into a situation where somebody used that to be mean to these other kids. And I just left it as that. He's 6 years old, It's not a big talk, and he doesn't act like the type of kid that would bully, but then again, how do you know what type? Most parents don't want to believe their kid would be capable of that.
True.
So then I was watching TV the other day and was flipping channels, and I came across an article about a little boy in middle school, and I have the article. The little boy's name is Israel Price. Let me pull it up here. Israel Price. And he was surrounded in a bathroom by some bullies, and one boy pushed him or pushed another one into him. He knocked his head against a wall, and the little boy now has a concussion that is affecting his speech and his walking. And this is a little middle school kid. He's 13 years old. And he used to sing and do performances different places, and now he can't do that. And, his parents and him as well had reported the incident numerous times to the public school that he went to teachers and stuff, and nothing apparently was done that was effective about it. And, we all know that the bullying can start as simple as just a name calling or shunning someone, a group of kids shunning other kids. But it seems to escalate in a lot of situations. And I read article after article. There was another little girl who was a special needs child, and she was bullied numerous times by a group of girls. And one time she had her head shoved in, against a locker, and she suffered a concussion like this boy did. It didn't seem to cause any lasting damage. But then the following time, the parents had actually been at the school that day for a parent-teacher type conference thing, and they had left. The dad had left. The mom was waiting for the daughter to get her backpack and to come out of school. And they were on the second floor hallway, and some girls surrounded her and ended up bashing her head in, and Mom found her in a pool of her own blood.
Oh, my gosh.
She wasn't dead, but she has scars and lasting issues from this. And then there have been kids that have been teased and bullied and picked on. This one article, a little boy by the name of Smalley, that was his last name. I'm trying to remember the first name or pull up the article here. Yeah, here it is. Ty Smalley. His mom dropped him off on a Thursday afternoon at home. Apparently what had happened is he'd been bullied and bullied and bullied, and it had kept going on in the school, and the parents had kept talking to the administrators. They didn't want to just pull the kid out because anywhere you go you can encounter this type of thing. They wanted to teach him how to deal with it, and most parents are going to, of course, say, avoid the kids, walk away, ignore them, tell someone, all the things, because you don't want your kid fighting. And most schools have a zero tolerance policy now, that if you fight back, you're a part of the problem and you can be suspended. So I guess this is what had happened in this instance. And his mom picked him up and dropped him off at home, and he killed himself.
Oh, my God.
So, but the story has, I can't say a happy ending, but it's turned out that his father has spent the last few years since he died in 2010 standing up for people that are bullied and trying to help stop bullying and educating. He's been in over 100 schools. He's talked to thousands and thousands of children. He says he's determined to help save other children from this, and he was part of the group that did the show called Bully. And that show, if I remember from what I read, dealt with bullying not just from the aspect of the victims, but from the parents of the victims, from the administrators, and from the parents of the bullies as well. And
Well, did the parents know their children were involved in this activity?
I'm not sure on each case, case by case, what it is, but a lot of times parents are informed that they're, if the school system's doing their job, the parents are informed. But a lot of times parents want to say boys will be boys or kids will be kids, but I was speaking with Kimberly earlier, and it says that a lot of times these kids don't outgrow these behaviors. It becomes something where they sexually harass women in the workplace, or, they bully coworkers, their own children. They bully their own children, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like, someone who, like a sex offender who, molests someone or gets molested, they may end up molesting, or they're abused, they may abuse, and it's a cycle. And so it's not just kids being kids. And in some of these cases, this one here with the little boy, the first little boy I told you about, Israel Price, it hasn't been classified as assault yet. To me, when it crosses the line and the person is physically harmed, it's no longer just a bullying issue, it's assault.
Well, now, Ruthie, when you were growing up, did bullying exist, or what was the deal back then?
If it was, I was too naive to see it, because I didn't really see any bullying. I saw fighting on the school bus, but I wouldn't call it bullying. It was just two guys get into an argument and start fisticuffs,
Yeah,
But,
yeah, that's different.
yeah, but like I say, it probably was, but I walked around with my head in the sand and didn't see it, so. And I don't remember my children bringing it up. It may have happened, but I don't remember any of them coming and saying, so-and-so, they'll say, so-and-so's picking on me, but I've never heard any, that it was something that was ongoing all the time, so.
Yeah. What about you, Kimberly?
Well, my brother was picked on a lot in school. He had a problem. He was slight mental deficiency. I think they'd called it ADD now, but he had a learning disability, and he was called stupid, and he didn't tolerate it. He would end up popping kids that called him that because he was big. He was taller than I am and husky, but so he would end up, they'd call him stupid, he'd pop him, he'd get expelled. And that was just a cycle throughout his school years, and he didn't believe he was smart, and even in things I knew he was smart in, like I thought he would have made a great sportscaster because he could rattle off teams and scores, and
Wow.
but he'd been so put down and that he never really considered that he could do much. So
Yeah.
it was sad.
That is sad. It reminds me of something that I read just recently, and it was about 4 frogs. And these 4 frogs were in a contest, and they were going to climb this tower. And so they had an audience around them cheering them on. And so the 4 frogs started climbing the tower, and they got so far. And these were little bitty frogs, almost like a tree frog. And the people or the entities that were cheering them on, they were like, "You're never going to make it. You're too small. There's no way you can climb that tower." And one by one, they began dropping off. And so finally, there was just one little bitty frog left, and he actually made it to the top of the tower. And when it was all said and done, they wondered, well, why did the smallest little frog make it to the top of the tower, and these other frogs just dropped off? And come to find out that the little bitty frog that actually won the contest, he was deaf. And so when you let that sink in, it tells you, do not listen to people that are the naysayers and the ones that are rooting against you and the ones that say you can't do this, you can't do that. He didn't hear that in his ears, and so he thought he could, and he did. And so it reminds me of your brother Michael. Just when he heard it, he took it in as the truth.
And that's hard. I mean, you can say that to a kid, and it's not quite as hard for an adult. It can be hard for an adult too, though. But
Sure.
their peers are so important to them. So it's it's difficult to say, just don't listen, or I'm thinking that parents are going to be the ones that are going to have to stand up and disprove what their peers are saying, and even then, it's got to be awful. I wasn't ever teased, or if I was like Sister Ruth. I don't care. I didn't hear it. Didn't pay any attention to it, and I didn't go to the same school that my brother did. I only heard about that afterwards, so it didn't really affect me. But I can just imagine, having to deal with it over and over and over. That just saying ignore it's not going to be enough. We're going to have adults that stand up and step up and show the kids that they're valuable.
True.
Right.
True.
And the thing that this gentleman's doing, this Mr. Smalley, he's not the only person. There's plenty of people out there. I mean, he has gone into the schools and with this video and talked with people and shown them the face of what can happen, and tried to put a face on the victim so that maybe he can create some empathy in the people that are doing the bullying, the children that are doing the bullying, and letting them see the other face of it. Now, that being said, I read some tips about teaching your child not to bully, and one of them was teaching them how they would feel if it was done to them.
I was going to say that because I'm a horrible person, like, when it comes to this. And I'm like, well, if I show you how it feels, you'll probably get a better lesson. That's not a good way. I'm not advocating that. But I'll have to sit here and say, I think it works sometimes, but that's not the best course.
Right.
But, like, if you start bullying some of these kids, then you can see it. But there's a better way, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying they're on to something there, I believe.
Right. And, I read some different, different things, and it was talking about, teaching the child to stand up to the bullies, because what the bullies want is a reaction. When they call you a name, they want to see you crumble. They want to see it affect you. So like your brother did, I mean, not advocating popping them, because I can tell you with schools having the zero tolerance policy, that wouldn't fly these days.
Or didn't fly back then either.
But, learning how to not let it affect them, and that's tough.
Yeah.
Don't know how you would do it other than, just keep reminding them, like you said, positive reinforcement at home. You're not stupid. If someone calls you stupid, let them think that. They're the ones with the problem.
They're stupid.
That type thing, But, I was a victim of a incidents of bullying. It wasn't an ongoing thing for a long period of time, but I had two neighbor girls that were friends of mine. We were both friends. We're all three friends, and we hung out together. We lived next door to each other. We'd stayed the night. We played with each other. We rode the bus. We were just pals. And one day, one of them decided that she was mad at me for something, or maybe she was jealous that me and her sister, that was her twin, were close. Maybe we were closer than her, and I don't think we ever intentionally excluded her. To this day, I don't know what caused it. But it's like she snapped, and she was a different person. And it started innocent enough. She'd call me names occasionally, and, I'd go home and tell my mom, and she'd say, well, ignore her. Maybe she's jealous, or, my dad would say the same thing. It's not true. Don't listen to her. Walk away if she starts. Then it got to be where she would get in my ear and she would say things other people couldn't hear, and she'd hum, or she'd yell in my ear. And then it got to be where she would flick my hair on the bus, or pull it, or take my breaths out and throw them at me, tear pages out of school books, take things out of my backpack and tear them up, pencils, notebooks. Try to push me when I got off the bus so I'd fall. Push me on the walk home because we met at like the corner of one block, walked the distance of the the street to the next street in a neighborhood, and always in a group of kids. And then my parents kept telling me to walk away from her, to ignore her, not to give her power over the situation, and just kept telling me to do that. And finally, when it started escalating that she was getting physical, my dad said, you may end up having to take a stand with her. I don't want you to learn to fight, and to fight kids and to be a person who gets involved in fighting, but you may have to take a stand to her. And it came to that.
You busted her up?
Well, she was, I had gotten some new shoes for Easter, and my mom had let me wear them to school and told me to be really careful with them and not to mess them up because it wasn't been Easter yet, and I got to wear them ahead of time. And, we weren't a poor family, but we weren't a rich family. And to me, those new shoes were precious. And this is after months of being bullied. She stepped on the back of my new shoes, and I asked her to stop. And she had also been pulling my hair and stuff, and I told her to stop, and she didn't stop. And she stepped on it and broke the strap, and I turned around and grabbed her by the throat. I just grabbed her and held her. But it was hot and sweaty out, and I had a little bit of a nail, and I guess it must have scratched her as I grabbed her and my hand slipped. And I just held her out like that. And then when I let her go, she took off running towards the door. Well, my mom had seen the whole incident and told her to take her butt home. So I bent over to pick up my books, and when I did, she came up and kneed me in the butt, trying to knock me down. So I threw her to the ground and sat on her, and I think I did punch her at least once. It's hard to remember.
Did she ever bully you again?
No, and she did go home and tell her parents, and her parents came to deal with it, but my dad basically took care of that. He put a stop to it. He said, you've been notified before this was going on. You did nothing about it. It's handled now. Don't come back over here starting this. I think it's done. And it was. We weren't allowed to play together for a while. We could ride the bus together, but we weren't allowed to play together for a while, her parents doing. And then eventually we were allowed to play together, and it never continued. And, had that happened at school, though,
yeah,
I could have been suspended for sticking up for myself.
And nowadays, it's like at the bus stop is part of school.
Oh, yeah,
and
like those kids in their front yard,
with the fake gun. Now, Ruthie, I want y'all to be just brutally honest. What would you have done in her situation? You heard it was ongoing, nobody could stop it, and it came to a breaking point. What would you have done? Tell the truth.
Stood there and cried.
Really?
Tell you, I was very, very shy when I was younger. Ask Dee, she'll tell you. Now,
well, I was too. I was very shy.
Yeah. But I had kids take my ruler away from me, out of my backpack and stuff on school, and I didn't say anything. Dee did, but I didn't.
Wow.
See, I had her to take care of me.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, really, I would have just stood there and cried.
Okay, that's an honest answer. Kimberly?
I don't know. I've read articles that say that if you tell a child to walk away and ignore it, it's not going to go away, that they need to take a stand. And if they can take a stand verbally before it escalates into something physical, that might put a stop to it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I saw.
What would I have done? Well, I'm not sure, but I'll tell you that I did punch a girl in the face once. So
Do tell.
She pushed my little brother, so I grabbed her by the hair and I punched her in the face.
Well, it's a big consolation
So-
you were taking up for your brother.
So I would think that I would do the same thing if someone messed with me, but I would
just
have
don't
to
know.
have noticed it. And I went through, I was pretty much oblivious in school. I had my friends, and if people didn't like me, I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had anybody mess with me as far as take my stuff.
If they just kept on like hitting you and smacking you
It
and
wouldn't
pushing
have,
you.
it wouldn't have happened more than a couple of times. I'd have pushed them back.
Okay. All right. Well, one time, the only fight I ever really got into, I was in 8th grade, and I was a cheerleader, and I just so happened to be wearing my cheerleading outfit. That's when you could wear them back then. And this little boy, I say little boy, he was small for his age, for 8th grader. And all year long, he had aggravated me. I would sit in front of him. He would take his desk and push it, and I'd go like this. I mean, just try to trip me as I walk past him to hand out papers or whatever, and just on and on and on. And finally, I got tired of it. And this was toward the end of the year. And I just actually jumped him. I attacked him after he did it. We went over about 3 or 4 desks. I mean, it was like WWE. Here I am in my cheerleading uniform, and we're going round and around, you know what I'm saying, over and over, and we're on the floor, and we're just going at it. And I had had enough, and we both got sent to the deans, and I didn't get in trouble because I explained my position, and, you know, he really didn't have a leg to stand on. But that was really the only time I ever, you know, it wasn't more of a bullying, I guess, now that I think about it, but just aggravation, just constantly, and I got tired of it, and we just went over all the desks, and I won, though.
Yeah. Well, you know, kids get picked on.
You didn't even have to say it. We knew.
Well, he was little, and I was tall.
Kids get picked on for all sorts of things, and I have my son who has a food allergy to peanuts. And he sits at a regular table, but on the sign it does say no nuts. And anybody that has a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from home, or peanut butter crackers, or something, you know, in their food that might contain nuts or might be made where nuts are processed, tree nuts, peanuts, any kind of nut, are not allowed to sit with him. So they try to keep it, you know, right with the group and not way off by itself, so it's not as obvious.
Yeah.
But it is known, you know, and I would hate for him to be bullied, but it says over 30% of children who suffer food allergies report having been bullied at school. While verbal abuse was the most common form of bullying, 40% reported having been physically threatened, such as having the allergen thrown or waved at them or being touched by the allergen.
Oh,
now, I have to tell you, I would go off if my son had an allergic reaction, because some kid decided that that was a way to pick on my kid by throwing or waving or touching him with the allergen.
What would you do, beat the kid up?
No, I wouldn't touch the kid, but
The mama?
no, you know, I'm going to talk about that too. No, I would probably, you know, really, I mean, I don't know what I'd do. I would definitely, the school would have a problem, you know, if they weren't handling the situation. You know, I might put people on the news, you know, and blast them that they, you know, I mean, if they knew about it and they weren't doing something about it. If a parent was unaware, you know, because sometimes you are unaware, but if they're ignoring it and they're not doing something about it, there would be a serious problem.
Yeah, that's true.
But, you know, I mean, it's hard to say what you would do in a situation. But having said that, I read a comment on one of the sites. A lady was sharing what had happened with her son, and everybody was saying how they were sorry that it had happened, and this, that, and the other. And then this other person makes this comment that her son or daughter or somebody had been bullied, and that she got a hold of the kid, and she told him, if this keeps happening, I'm going to go to your house and kill your mom. And I was like, really? I mean,
That would probably put a stop to it, but I don't think that's.
I mean, I have threatened before, you know, with my nieces, other kids that were picking on them at a playground or whatever. Look, I will take you, I will sit here and watch you and follow you home and go talk to your mom and put a stop to this mess. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't threaten to harm the person's mom. I mean, what is that going to solve?
True. But you know what? I've read it in the news, and probably all you have, that mothers take it upon themselves to go to these houses and actually beat the kid up that is bullying the child. I've read that over and over again. They just, and, you know, as a mother, that's an instinct, I think, but not to a child. You know, I wouldn't do that. But that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and people called her out on it on the thread there.
Yeah, that's a little much.
And it said that a lot of time these bullying incidents happen so quickly that they're confined to just a few seconds, because they don't want to, be found out. So
Sure.
they'll say something or they'll shove a kid and then they'll walk off. They're in groups a lot of times, and girls
cowards.
bully in groups more than boys bully in groups.
I believe that, yeah.
Um,
I also read something too, what you sent me, and I was surprised by this, Ruthie, because it said that in elementary school is when the most violence occurs. Then it tapers off a little bit in middle school, which I'm surprised. I thought middle school would be the worst offending group, and then by high school it's not as much. But the verbal abuse, is stays consistent all through.
And that's why I think it's so important that parents and educators and, just everybody focus on the kids when they're so little, learning, having empathy, and
Right.
not learning at looking at somebody else as being different as a problem. Because it's like I was telling Kimberly, these kids are taught, at home hopefully, but in school that fighting's not okay, and that, they should be accepting of everyone, But at the same time, then they they go to church and they hear homosexuality is wrong. If you don't believe the same as I believe, it's wrong. They're subjected to driving through town and seeing signs that
True.
fags are going to hell and stuff like that. And I mean, that's reinforcing a problem, and that's, awful. We talked with the kids today, and it just so happens that this subject came up and I had no idea, but this month is actual the national month against bullying. And October 9th, this coming Wednesday, is Unity Day, and it's for standing up against people that are bullied, and you're supposed to wear orange. So if any of y'all have anything orange, wear your orange and stand up against bullying. We talked to the kids about it, and they plan on doing it. Some of them go to school, and some of them are homeschooled, but regardless, it can happen anywhere.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. So, Ruthie, now you had 3 children, and not one of them, did any of your children bully anybody?
Not that I know of. They didn't tattle on one another, so I don't know.
That's good too.
But I can remember when I was younger, one of my sisters was complaining that somebody was calling them names. And that's a type of bullying, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother said, well, just tell them sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And said, tell them that, and I guess it worked because they didn't complain about it anymore. So,
yeah, if a kid can absorb that and just take it, especially when it comes from somebody they admire, like their mother or somebody, I think it means a lot. And I know people that go to these schools and talk to kids. A lot of times kids, they don't really admire these people. They don't know them. They just think it's another authority figure that
Right.
they could care less about. And it does have to start in the home, because I would be so embarrassed if one of our children would be a bully. I would rather them be almost anything than a bully or somebody that didn't have empathy. What
Right.
about you, Kimberly?
That would be hard. Yep.
I mean, you have 3 children. What has been your experiences with
Well,
this?
my kids are the ones that are homeschooled, so other than the typical sibling name calling, we haven't had to deal with that. My middle son is extremely sensitive, so I can't imagine him ever calling anybody else names. He was in gymnastics and ended up quitting gymnastics because he couldn't handle the older boys teasing the littler boys. He wasn't being teased at all,
Mm-hmm.
but just seeing someone else being picked at upset him to the point that he didn't want to do gymnastics. He's soft-hearted.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, he is. He really is.
And my oldest went to public school for a while, but he's just got that personality that he was really popular, and
Yeah.
he didn't have any trouble. So, and I can't imagine him bullying anybody. He's more of the type of person that would stick up for somebody.
Yeah, I've always been, for the most part, the one that would, take up for the person being bullied. And, but I do remember early on in my, work career, when I was younger, say about 20, there was this, remember it like it was yesterday, there was this girl, and we called her Strawberry. See, that right there is a problem. But she was different, and she had, red short hair, and I didn't come up with a name, but some people that I work with did, and so she got to liking it, because we were giving attention to her. But then, they really started, and I'm going to say they because, I didn't participate, but if you're just a silent participator, you're just as guilty. And I would laugh sometimes, not where I thought she would know it, but for whatever reason, I just thought it was funny. And I look back and I say, oh, that was horrible. I should have stood my ground then, like I would now or when I was in school. But for whatever reason, this particular person, I just let it roll off my back. And so I say, if you don't stand up for something that you see as wrong, you're part of it.
You're part of the problem, definitely.
Yeah, I believe that.
And that's the thing is, they said about talking to your children and helping them to understand that these things do happen. And if it ever happens to you, tell me, tell the teacher, tell the person that's doing it, this isn't okay. Don't do this. Stand up to them. If you see someone else being bullied, to tell a teacher, to tell a parent, don't just join in, and definitely don't just walk away and ignore it, but to do something about it, because it won't stop, it won't go away, and it could get a lot worse. But, giving them the power, to understand that, they can be part of a solution to something. We were talking with the kids in the back, and they were saying, well, if you saw it, what should you do? And I said, well, you definitely wouldn't want to put yourself in harm's way. But at the same time, if you saw something going on, and one of them said, well, but if you did that, you might, if you went over there and said something, then they might start bullying you, and that has happened.
Oh, yeah.
That was
more likely
the case with this one little boy, Ty, that killed himself. A lot of times it wasn't him being directly picked on, but he'd see other people being picked on and bullied, and he would go over and he would try to put a stop to it, and then it ended up coming on himself. And he was a small kid. He wasn't like a big kid. He was one of the smallest kids in his school, in his class. And
I think a lot of this stems from what we consider to be the model person. You have to be, over 5'5" if you're, you have to be tall, you have to be thin, you have to, have hair, you have to, not have zits. We have put people in these unrealistic molds, and when we do that, then anything that's outside of that we think is an aberration. It's something that's not welcomed. And so if we would just look at people and say, you know what, he might be short, bald-headed, and have zits all over his face, but he is a person, he's a human.
Right.
He's no different than me. We're all in different packages. I mean, every one of us up here are different. Some of us are thinner, some of us have, a big bulge down low, some of us have a big bulge up high, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about women that have babies and stuff. Some of us, we're just different, but the differences, to me, are the things that should really endear us to one another. Right.
You wouldn't want a flower bed that had all the same colored flowers in it. So we're like God's flower garden. We're all different, but we all belong there.
Right. And that's the awesome thing is it's so many times it's a feeling of superiority and a feeling of being able to control someone, seeing their differences and weaknesses, and assuming that you have the right, that you're better than, and putting someone else down. And, it's sad to say, but I strongly believe that the church has been a big proponent of causing a lot more problems than it's ever solved, because of the fact that, you do have the Sunday messages that, if you're not a believer, if you're different, if you, and these kids pick up on this, and I mean, as much as they absorb, you know, the things they hear on TV and programs they see and repeat messages, you know, that they see on TV, they repeat things they hear their parents say. They're little sponges. And, you know, if they're not being taught to look at people that are different than them just as simply being different and then not being a problem or not meaning that that person's less than them, you know, and they're not equal and just another human being, that, like you said, we're human beings and we all have something to contribute. We all belong.
Right.
There's where your problem.
And, you know, bullying does not stop, you know, after you graduate from, you know, high school or college or whatever. You know, adults, we do it in a way that is a little more subtle because we do it mostly in our minds, but we do it. If you know, 30 people walked in here right now and, you know, 15 of them were, you know, well-dressed and manicured and, you know, had the look of what the world would consider success, some of us might gravitate toward those instead of if the other 15 would come in and look like they had to sleep on the street last night, would we gravitate toward? And I think it's just in a sick way, we would gravitate toward what we considered to be more successful. And we've got to stop it. I mean, bullying doesn't go away after we get that high school diploma. You know, it doesn't. And so if you're out there and your mind is, you know, I'm not a bully or whatever, re-examine yourself. And I think we all should re-examine ourselves because, well, for one thing, we need to do it on a daily basis to find out, you know, if we're on the right track or at least wanting to be on the right track. But re-examine yourself to see what kind of biases you have, and get rid of them. Life's too short to continue being biased toward one group or another. And anyway, we have 1 minute. Closing thoughts, anybody? Ruthie, your garden and flower analogy was marvelous. That makes so much sense.
Just like seashells on the seashore. They're all different, but they're all seashells. Oh.
That's right. Very good. But you can just come up with it. Just, you know, we can spend all kind of time, all these words, and Ruthie was like, well, seashells on I can't even say it, on the seashore. Oh, you got me.
Well, I was going to say just that if you're interested in becoming a part of the solution with the bullying, you know, there's the Bully Project out there. You can Google bullying, stopping bullying, and you can come up with a wealth of information. They have tips to help you deal with children that have witnessed bullying and how to handle that, how to handle it if you are a parent of a bully, and find out that if you suspect that your child is a bully, or if you just want to teach your child not to be a bully. I mean, there's just a number of things, you know, that can help. And then, of course, you know, like I said, encourage everybody to wear orange this Wednesday and, you know, for Unity Day and stand up against bullying.
We'll do it. Kimberly?
Completely off topic.
Yeah, we got
just
45 seconds.
All right,
Go,
45
girl.
seconds. Tomorrow, October 7th, is the peak for the Draconid meteor shower. It's one of the only ones that you can actually see after sunset instead of the middle of the night. So if you don't have anything to do tomorrow night, right after sunset, look to the north. You might see some shooting stars.
Thank you very much. I'll take that in consideration. All right, don't be a bully, and I mean it. See you next week. Hey, we got the Naked Pastor tonight at 8 o'clock. It's going to be awesome. See you then.